And hi, this is Bruce Rawles. I'm speaking again with Susan Dugan. And today we thought we'd talk about Workbook Lesson 109 from the Workbook of A Course in Miracles. And this is something that is very appropriate anytime, any place, anywhere, any when. Um,
Definitely.
so good pick, Susan. I Rest in God is the title, and yeah, it fits. We were just talking before we started the recording about the uncertainty of this world, and all the classrooms that we have of trying to second guess our dream experience and trying to make sense out of a pretty crazy world.
Yeah,
So if you'd like to
yeah,
just jump in and
sure.
give us some thoughts, yeah.
Well, I mean, I was thinking of this. We've been trying to get together for a few days now. We were going to talk about gratitude because we're recording this just after Thanksgiving, and we're planning on recording it before Thanksgiving. But anyway, that's also a great topic. But the reason I
Mhm.
guess that I've been drawn to this lesson um, lately again is just because I actually had the week of Thanksgiving off from work because I was getting to the end of my hours. I work I can only work so many hours a year in because I work remotely and it's a part-time cap on the hours. So I've really maxed out a lot of hours this year, but you get to a point where state law doesn't allow you to keep going. So I've been asked to sort of cut back. And so I had a whole week off, which has not happened to me like all year since January. And I found that um, I I found it was interesting to see how difficult it is for me to even slow down, let alone rest. And and I think that and of course I still had many things to do because
Mhm.
we've got the holidays coming. I got to go right back to work. I've got my daughter and son-in-law coming out. There's stuff with my husband's resuming his treatment for cancer and things that will that are related to that, and then just getting in my own appointments of things and health stuff. Um, I was noticing all of that, and then I was also thinking about because I've always really struggled with all my life since I was a kid with not being a great sleeper, really struggling with rest. Having my mind click on in the middle of the night, imagination, good things, bad things, whatever. And so and noticing that continuing pattern, which is exhausting.
Mhm.
And but really I've been trying for a long time to really think of rest in a different way in the course's terms, in the sense of the quiet center of the mind, where we can truly rest assured that we are safe and supported and really not the home of evil, darkness, and sin. We have not departed from our union, our undifferentiated union with God. But of course, that's a problem for me, as an individual, as seeing myself as an individual, because I don't, that's not my experience anymore once I sort of, you know, sided with the what the course calls the tiny mad idea that I could be separate from God, of imagining myself separate from God, a self separate from God. I created this whole other seeming reality into which I just fled in my guilt that that was a real thought. And so here, on the level that we seem to operate within that dream of autonomy from God, it's a very restless place, right? We are really always trying to kind of figure out some way to reconcile the pain of the loss that we feel over that estrangement from God, but also to really kind of constantly outrun the guilt that we feel over believing that unreal idea is real, and accompanied with a God that knows about it and a punishing God. And so there really is no rest in this world. It's a weary thought. I mean, the expression "there's no rest for the weary" is apt in that sense because we're all weary of keeping this world spinning in our mind but we're afraid of going back to the mind and resting with the in the decision making mind, and resting and returning, choosing to return to that quiet center of the mind that knows that we are held and supported and loved and loving and innocent and universally, accepted and forgiven. And so our mind is split. We're running away. We're refugees from that love in the mind, but we're also, part of us is just so longing to really rest and let that idea, that tiny mad idea that is so painful, that still drives our behavior all the time, to let that rest finally. But we're just not there yet. So this is a process, and the course uses the process and practice of a new kind of forgiveness that we're hopefully learning to practice all the time in our relationships, and which is really about questioning the cause of my reactivity, my restlessness, um, my neediness, my sense of feeling unseen, unappreciated, unknown, anxious, depressed, worried, you know, or suddenly elated by something that seems like it's going to solve that problem in the world. So all of that's exhausting, and
Mhm.
the only rest really is what this is the rest within the decision making minds, outside the dream's decision to rest with the reality, the reflection of the reality, which in the course is represented by the terms, the symbols, Jesus, Holy Spirit, or right mind. But really, is just that reflection, that assurance of that we are whole, that we are safe, that we are forgiven, that we are forgiving, that we are loved, we are loving, and not all the things that we seem to be as a separate self, right?
Right.
Which seems quite otherwise,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's
So,
it's not a placid place in anywhere in the ego mind. There's no
oh my God, no.
there's no
Yeah.
solace, there's no comfort, there's no ease. And
Mm-mm.
it's I think some more that we just look at that honestly without, shrieking in horror.
And
And just
without judgment, that
yeah,
we're not there yet. And
right,
so
right.
it does appear to be a conflict, right?
Oh,
We're
absolutely.
in
Yeah.
conflict all the time. Yeah.
The cognitive dissonance, the contrast between, extreme contrast, really. If we just put the two thought systems side by side and notice how we're thinking and feeling and with the experience we have when we're in that dualistic ego mode,
Yeah.
and contrast that with when we actually, even in just in brief moments now and then, let go of that, it's like, what a relief. It's the old cliche
Yeah.
of, it feels so good when I stop banging my head against the wall. Well, the ego thought system is a constant head banging,
Yeah.
metaphorically,
And when we
experience,
are
isn't it?
in that, when we do have that experience,
Yeah.
that release and relief, and there is a sense of gratitude that comes
Yeah.
with that, and
Yes.
rest.
Right.
But it so quickly can be accompanied again by just I notice that in myself all the time. The next thing
Hmm.
I know, I'm back in like complete anxiety and fear, and in some ways it's much worse than it seems worse than it used to be, because we're lifting the veil on how bad it has always been.
Paying more
And
attention. Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're much more self-aware,
Right.
and that is a necessary step
Hmm.
toward awakening,
Yeah.
because we have to experience by seeing. I think the course often just means experience. It's not seeing with our body's eyes, but it's experiencing the consequences
Right.
of our decisions,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Which are our decision as a mind outside the dream that's really animating all of this within our mind, because it hasn't really left the one mind. But our experience is always, or an outside picture of the inner condition of what we're choosing. And that's the really, really hard part of the course, is to accept that I'm choosing this anxiety, I'm choosing
Hmm.
this experience, or the whatever the experience in the dream that I'm attributing the anxiety to, which really is, it's a completely false connection. because it's, as Ken Wapnick always said, nothing and no one outside the dream can take your peace away.
Mhm.
That's not possible. That's we are asked to learn to be completely responsible, to take back responsibility for all that we're experiencing. And through that process of practicing that, questioning, the cause of my reactions, remembering what the course tells us the real cause is, which is this guilt in the mind, and the constantly trying to project it outward on someone or something else. um, we eventually learn to sort of accept that that's what we're doing, and then to be kind of forgiving with ourselves, because we can't possibly see anyone else as innocent if we're not able to do that. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's a
Hey,
big process in itself, right?
exactly. And as you're
Yeah,
mentioning Ken, before you uttered his name, I was flashing to something he said in his commentary on lesson 182, which I listened to
I love that lesson. Yeah,
quite a lot. And the one line that really stuck with me is that, slightly paraphrased, I think, is that he said, the purpose of the course isn't to make us miserable, but it's to point out how miserable we've made ourselves by choosing
right,
the ego. And
right,
and I think it's almost like we've when we are oblivious to the right mind, and often typically before we start studying the course in any depth, it's almost like we're under heavy sedation, and when that wears off, we start realizing, oh, this is really a very painful identity that we've chosen,
right,
and it's only when we see the depth and breadth of that and recognize the extreme contrast to the peace and the rest and the true safety, comfort, and certainty that comes from the Holy Spirit's correction, that we begin to think, I maybe could try this more often, and
right.
eventually altogether choose against the ego, not by fighting against it, but just by seeing that it has never worked for us. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, the Holy Spirit's correction, that's a metaphor
Mhm.
for the that is a symbol for that united awareness of
Mhm.
love, of,
Mhm.
of, of, universal love, that is again undifferentiated, what the Christian mystics talked about as, that undifferentiated union, right, or unity.
Mhm.
That is, and what Eastern traditions, all traditions really that are non-dualistic, talk about that.
Mhm.
Christianity is not non-dualistic, but there were mystics that pointed, and sects of all religions that have, um, or many religions that
Mhm.
have really gone in that direction and
Sure.
reflected that truth. And so it's really about, just recognizing that there's a part of our mind, or our universal heart, or whatever you want to call it, that that sees it differently, that knows that it is not traumatized by these wild imaginings of an out of control world, which it certainly seems to be,
Mhm.
and a very, very unloving and conflicted, collective world and personal world. I mean, if
Right.
we're honest, almost, there's constant conflict in our world. And even
Mhm.
if we're not in open conflict with each other, we're in conflict in our head all the time with each other,
Exactly.
and judging all the time, and harshly judging ourselves, harshly judging everybody else, holding people and ourselves to impossible standards as humans,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
that no one could meet,
Mhm.
because the whole idea of being human, of coming into a dualistic world, is to be in conflict, right? Is to believe that that original imaginary conflict with me over God exists, and of course it doesn't. So, I mean, the Course says God thinks otherwise. Like, God know, the Course takes a very radical stance on that, and says, God, what kind of God would know about a world like this? God doesn't know anything about this
It's,
world. That it's a figment of your imagination,
it's wonderfully
So, yeah,
uncompromising.
yeah. I mean, God's not going to participate in slaughter and
Mhm.
hurricanes and disasters and smiting people and judging people and condemning, and So yeah. But should we read some of this, do you think?
Sure, let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay,
Do you want to read the first paragraph?
sure.
Okay.
We ask for rest today and quietness unshaken by the world's appearances. We ask for peace and stillness in the midst of all the turmoil born of clashing dreams. We ask for safety and for happiness, although we seem to look on danger and on sorrow, and we have the thought that will answer our asking with what we request. And the thought of God is really that symbol, right? Of
Mhm.
of love in our mind that thinks otherwise, that reflects the truth, that none of it is real or has changed our, their guilt is not real. No one's guilty here. There's no conflict,
Mhm.
right?
I
There's
was
no fear.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was thinking that the word we jumped out at me in this since it's all in the first person plural here. And it occurs to me that the we would be symbolic of my mind joined with the Christ mind or Holy Spirit. And because I, as an individual, don't ask for peace and stillness.
Right,
And
right,
I don't ask for rest because I came, like we were talking about earlier, we came here in order to be different and to be an individual. And so there's no real intent for peace in an identity that was made out of separate the belief in separation.
right. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really that one loving presence in our mind that is our teacher,
Mhm.
from the course's perspective, is always there as we have the ego as our teacher, which is the ego is the part of our mind that wants to be separate, right? Wants to believe this is real. And then we have that one loving presence in the mind that is our real teacher that's saying to us, I'm with you. I'm with you all the time. I mean, you can dissociate me, but it's a we,
Yeah, yeah. And it's our real identity, so it's not going anywhere.
Right. And just waits for us, quietly
Yeah.
waits for us and doesn't try to argue with us
Mhm.
or convince us or intercede or any of that. Just waits for us to get really tired enough and weary enough and attuned to the pain of what we're doing enough
Mhm.
that we finally say, there has to be a better way, right?
Yeah, yeah. There's no coercion, and the Holy Spirit is a perfect practitioner of the Star
Yeah.
Trek prime directive of non-interference. It basically just
So
waits perfectly until, we of our own free will and accord decide that enough is
that my
enough with it.
way isn't working.
The
Yeah.
ego is just not cutting it.
Yep.
Or maybe put a different way, it's cutting everything into little pieces that can't obviously possibly function together. Yeah.
Right. Right.
I'll read the next one. I
Okay.
rest in God. This thought will bring to you the rest and quiet, peace and stillness, and the safety and the happiness you seek. I rest in God. This thought has the power to wake the sleeping truth in you, whose vision sees beyond appearances to that same truth in everyone and everything there is. Here is the end of suffering for all the world, and everyone who ever came and yet will come to linger for a while. Here is the thought in which the Son of God is born again to recognize himself. Wow. Some of these passages, if you just let them sink in, you feel the depth of the
Yeah.
inspiration behind the words, the melos, as Ken would say.
Right.
And this whole section, a lesson certainly exudes that that
And this, I
quality.
think it really speaks to that idea of purpose that the course
Hmm.
is teaching us that, we've given the world, myself, my seeming self, an unholy purpose, the unholy purpose of proving that I'm separate from God,
Hmm.
and guilty, right? And then trying to find people who are guiltier than I am to make me feel better about it, right? So, and yet it never works, right? It just increases our guilt. But,
Hmm.
we have another purpose too, and that is the purpose of awakening from that nonsense ultimately. And the way that we do that is this journey back to the one mind, the one heart that is outside the dream, and then choosing a different teacher, choosing that um, recognizing ourself, our true self, right? Instead
Yeah.
of recognizing, versus this uh, this guilty separate self that we seem to think we are, right?
Yeah. As you're saying that, I was thinking the forgiveness process the course has us participate in is almost like watching um, something dividing and subdividing and subdividing into all these countless pieces and then running that movie backwards. Because if everything just collapsed back to the primordial pre-Big Bang tiny mad idea uh, awareness, it would freak us out basically. So it seems like we reintegrate parts of ourselves that we've orphaned off and and
Yeah.
and,
And I
and
mean, even
fragmented
as
off a little
individuals,
at a time.
parts of our seeming past as an individual, the story
Yeah.
of me,
Yeah.
I do think that the course like has you things kind of come up for healing,
Hmm. Hmm.
and all of it is an opportunity to sort of see, forgive the self that I was at that time, and my fear at that time, and how I was acting it out, and whoever else was involved, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And it doesn't have to be, but it's an internal process. Sometimes there can be things that that um, the healed mind leads us to maybe letting, doing something or saying something about, but maybe not. But just kind of just yeah, allowing that, we're really forgiving that whole all the different scenarios of it in this lifetime and whatever how many lifetimes. I mean, who knows? But yeah,
The whole hologram in our mind, huh,
yeah,
is being
yeah,
reassembled from
yep.
the
And the course doesn't dwell on any of that. It's not
no,
like your
no.
practices. It's just you just practice it. You
Hmm.
practice it, and what needs to come up for healing will come up, and you work with that. It doesn't. Course doesn't look at people that are still in our lives, or people that are still seeming to be living, or people, anyone that's crossing our mind that we're reacting to in any way, or
Hmm.
seems to be coming back to us in any way, then that's if there's still something that is triggering about that, then we work with that, right?
Right. And it seems like those early workbook lessons are a great example of that because it alternates between what seems to be internal and external until we recognize and generalize that it's everything's in our mind anyway. So we begin to see, well, it works the same regardless of whether it seems to be inside or outside or past,
Yep,
present, future, because space and
yep,
time are really arbitrary distinctions that we've made up.
right, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it's beautiful in that way too, that I mean, people get so hung up on, like, what if I don't completely forgive this relationship or whatever, while I'm still alive, or while the person is still alive, or whatever, we really do a head trip on ourselves around, being
Mhm.
alive or dead. Well, the course just says, there's really nothing living here. So, you know,
There's still sort of impact. Oh, there's nothing more.
yeah, I mean, it's okay. It's just work with it, as
Uh-huh.
long as you're in the dream,
Right.
use the dream and what comes
Right.
up, and
Right.
and
Right.
everybody is still accessible that's in your dream, and
Exactly.
they're
Exactly.
all parts of you. It's really not
Hmm.
not what it seems to be. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um and also the course has a sense of humor, I think,
Oh,
but
absolutely.
we
Absolutely.
don't. But
Yeah.
I think that symbol of love in our mind has a sense of humor, and is always saying, this is we're taking it so seriously here,
Oh,
and it's
yes.
really just silly.
About a decade ago, I had enough little smiley faces in the margins of an earlier version of my course book that
Yeah.
I gave a little presentation in Estes Park on the humor in the course, and I had more than enough to fill 75 minutes of
Oh
pretty
yeah.
packed quotes
No.
because when you really, especially when you read it aloud in a group or with another person, you
Yeah.
realize there's a lot of humor because it's Jesus, Holy Spirit, the course is poking such perfectly gentle, kind-hearted, non-derisive fun at everyone's ego and just
Right.
saying, you really still believe this, don't you?
Well, and I
Because
think the
that's
course
yeah.
is very graphic
Yeah,
too.
oh
It's
yeah, yeah,
like, I
yeah,
mean, a
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
it sounds like, Stephen King or
Oh,
something,
absolutely. Yeah,
serious
Halloween on
horror movie.
steroids. Yeah, yeah,
But
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
but that gets our attention and says, look at what
Right.
you're doing here.
Right, right, right.
Really, what are you doing?
Yeah,
And we don't we're in such denial about
right.
the all of our rituals and the our customs and our political correctness and all of it. We take it all so seriously. So
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah. But okay. I rest in God, completely undismayed. I'm on paragraph 3. This thought will completely undismayed, this thought will carry you through storms and strife, past misery and pain, past loss and death, and onward to the certainty of God. There is no suffering it cannot heal. There is no problem that it cannot solve, and no appearance but will turn to truth before the eyes of you who rest in God. And that doesn't mean that our in form, our things are fixed the way we want them to be personally fixed, or
Right, right.
that things that improve or whatever in our seeming lives,
Hmm. Hmm.
but that the way we experience them and go through them will be transformed
Yeah, exactly.
to
And
peaceful and kind and without fear, right?
absolutely.
Yeah,
That sentence 4, there is no problem that it cannot solve. Well, the Holy Spirit's solution is bring your mind up from the world, from and through the world, through the ego thought system. I'm picturing Ken Wapnick's wonderful metaphysical chart, and back to the blue dot of the decision maker. And that's the place where the healing takes place.
right.
And the solution is the solution is I just need to stop identifying and wanting to identify with the ego thought system. And
Yep,
that's the fix.
yep.
That just, and I do that just by looking at the ego's absurd solution of projecting and trying to take the unconscious, unfounded guilt and foist it on the world and
And
see
looking right.
that's not working. I just need to go past the world, past the ego to the decision for the ego. And that's why there's no problem that it cannot solve, because all problems are the same, no order of difficulty in miracles.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
really just looking at seeing what I'm doing in
Ah,
the reactivity in the specific way that it's coming up in my
yep.
life,
Yeah. Yeah.
this problem I'm having with you, this pattern that I'm in with you, where I just am always judging and always feeling distrustful or defensive or angry or worried or whatever it is, right? And just seeing, just saying I need help with this, and
Yeah.
I don't need help with fixing this, that's an opening to say I don't know what I'm doing here. I and so you're just in doing that, you're looking with you're inviting the love to look with you, right, at this. And so the moving up to the mind just happens of its own. It's
Right.
not something we can climb up to, right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
We can't do that on our own for sure.
right.
Yeah.
And we probably should get with just reading this because I'm looking at the
Yeah. Yeah.
how
Okay.
we're talking our time away. But
I'll read number
yeah,
4. This is the day of peace. You rest in God, and while the world is torn by winds of hate, your rest remains completely undisturbed. Yours is the rest of truth. Appearances cannot intrude on you. You call to all to join you in your rest, and they will hear and come to you because you rest in God. They will not hear another voice than yours because you gave your voice to God. And now you rest in him and let him speak through you. And that word undisturbed really is a powerful one for me. In Baird Spalding's books, Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East, there's this place where Jesus appears to this expedition, and he uses that word, that I'm completely undisturbed.
mm.
And
And wouldn't that be nice to rest completely undisturbed? I don't think I've ever done that as a body. I
yeah,
really don't think I've ever done that.
maybe just brief moments where there's a lull.
Maybe when I was a baby, but I don't know.
Really? Yeah. Okay. Well,
I don't know.
but
No,
but 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 yeah, I agree. I think most of what we call peace is really just a ceasefire, and
right.
the depth and the
Or
profundity of the peace
unconsciousness, right? Or
that's
numbing or
possible. We're
unconsciousness or
yeah, we're
something.
oblivious to that for the most part,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
In him, and that meaning that in that loving presence in our mind, in Holy Spirit, Jesus, or whatever the symbol is, in him you have no cares and no concerns, no burdens, no anxiety, no pain. So no fear of future and no past regrets. In timelessness you rest. while time goes by without its touch upon you, for your rest can never change in any way at all. You rest today, and as you close your eyes, sink into stillness. Let these periods of rest and respite reassure your mind that all its frantic fantasies were but the dreams of fever that has passed away. Let it be still and thankfully accept its healing. No more fearful dreams will come now that you rest in God. Take time today to slip away from dreams and into peace. Each hour that you take your rest today, I'm sorry, that's for you to read, but
Oh, okay,
yeah.
okay. Each hour that you take your rest today, a tired mind is suddenly made glad. A bird with broken wings begins to sing. A stream long dry begins to flow again. The world is born again each time you rest, and hourly remember that you came to bring the peace of God into the world, that it might take its rest along with you.
And that could be a confusing paragraph because
Yeah,
to people not really deeply familiar with the course, because it's not about, the course doesn't consider the world real either,
right.
but
It's
it's saying that,
poetry.
right, the mind is being healed about
Mm,
the unholy purpose it's given to this imaginary world, right?
exactly.
Meaning that it's dualistic and in conflict all the time.
Hmm.
Okay. How are we doing on time?
We've got 3 minutes.
You do it? Okay.
Sure, let's finish it.
With each 5 minutes that you rest today, the world is nearer waking, and the time when rest will be the only thing there is comes closer to all worn and tired minds, too weary now to go their way alone. And they will hear the bird begin to sing and see the stream begin to flow again, with hope reborn and energy restored, to walk with lightened footsteps along the road that suddenly seems easy as they go.
You rest within the peace of God today and call upon your brothers from your rest to draw them to their rest along with you. You will be faithful to your trust today, forgetting no one, bringing everyone into the boundless circle of your peace, the holy sanctuary where you rest. Open the temple doors and let them come from far across the world and near as well, your distant brothers and your closest friends. Bid them all enter here and rest with you.
You rest within the peace of God today, quiet and unafraid. Each brother comes to take his rest and offer it to you. We rest together here, for thus our rest is made complete, and what we give today we have received already. Time is not the guardian of what we give today. We give to those unborn and those passed by, to every thought of God and to the mind in which these thoughts were born and where they rest. And we remind them of their resting place each time we tell ourselves, I rest in God.
Thank
So,
you. Yeah,
yeah, it's
beautiful, isn't it?
lovely. It's a beautiful
Yeah, and like
lesson.
you say, it's a wonderful poetic lesson that,
Hmm.
is like Ken says, if we can read the course as an epic poem, we realize it's meant to be to heal the symbols in our mind, and
Yeah.
including the symbols of the selves that we think we are, and return us to that pure, undifferentiated awareness that we never left, where rest is not only possible but inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a big it's another thing that appeals to many of us about the course is that it's very rooted in Western literature, biblical language, but also Shakespearean language, Platonic philosophy, and so many. Yeah, it's very, very rich. If you're sort of a humanities person, you probably
Mhm.
would, and kind of steeped in that sort of thing, you probably really love this language. So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, Susan, for another wonderful conversation.
thank you.
I'll post this on our websites, and look forward to the next conversation.
Happy resting.
Likewise.
See
Great
how I do
topic
with
and
that.
great conversation. Yeah, let's. So,
Okay.
so now we got our practice cut out for us, huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Super. Thank you. Bye
Bye for
bye.
now.